All right, good day, everyone. Thanks for joining, or hopefully you're joining. I have to get back into the Samkhya Karika. It's been a few weeks since I've had an opportunity to get to it. It's been pretty busy, and thankfully, I've drawn on some of its teachings over these past few weeks that have been more trying than I was expecting. So we're up to Karika number 6. We have, all right, so let's go to 5 real quick. Perception is the application of senses to their special objects. Inference is said to be of 3 kinds. It is preceded by the knowledge of the middle term and the major term, and valid testimony consists of holy teachers and revelation. So, what the sage Kapila, who is the author of the Samkhya Karika essentially is trying to say is that there is ways to know. Essentially, these are the ways in which we know: direct perception, through like analogy, if you will, or inference, and then valid testimony. Right, they're the 3 main roads to know. Right, to know. We have to remember that Sankhya philosophy relies on analysis, right? It's not so much like storytelling. It's not so, just not just faith, right? There's a lot of analysis to it. So in 6, Kapila continues. By means of inference based on analogy, the objects beyond the senses are proved. That which is not proved by this inference and cannot be directly perceived is proved by valid testimony. Okay, so we have perception. We see a thing, we can observe it. This is obviously part of the scientific method. But what about those things that are not perceived, right? If there's instruments, of course, there are things today that are not directly perceived, but we use instruments to perceive. We think about the quantum world. Then we have an opportunity to, kind of reveal the secrets of that world that was once imperceptible. Kapila essentially, though, is in 6. What he's trying to get to is that if there are things that cannot be perceived directly with the senses, then the cause, we are seeing the effects, of some cause, right? So it is stated that, even for some, as Baura here, one of the commentators mentions, is that there are some that say the material nature is imperceivable. But really what we're focusing on is the spirit, right? The spirit, this, the higher self, as it would be called in Vedanta or in yoga, or the spirit rather in yoga. Right. How do we make contact with something like that? The idea in 6, and we're not going to get into the the deep, kind of details of it all, because it reveals itself in later Karika, later verses. So what's happening here is, because certain things are perceptible, right? Certain things we can see and observe, and yet their cause may not be perceptible. We know that they exist because of what we see in front of us, right? It's the pot analogy, right? The clay pot analogy. Of course, the clay, it's made up of clay. So it wasn't just a clay pot, right? It had to be shaped into this thing out of something else. So Kapila essentially is getting, okay, we don't directly know the existence of spirit, or of the spirit, but when a state of being can be achieved that is beyond that which we are typically experiencing, then there is something, right? We put a word to it for sure. It is the spirit. You call it whatever you want, really. But in this case, we call it the Purusha, right? The spirit. that that thing is not necessarily the cause of that state of being, but it proves its existence. So we don't have to, worry about this, kind of connecting or seeing or observing, with the instruments that we have been given to know that the spirit exists. But we once enter into, deep states of meditation, we have to remember that realization of the spirit can also be spontaneous. It doesn't necessarily have to come about by ways of like deep meditation or anything like that. Uh, uh, sometimes the spirit can be observed by, my favorite experience was almost being knocked down, physically knocked down when entering into the square in Prague. It's main like kind of parliamentary building, and there was a choir of like, I don't know, 40 singers. And it was just, I mean, bouncing off all the walls. It was wild. And, it was just awestruck. And essentially that's what, maybe it's not essentially what observing the spirit is, but being taken away, right? Being awestruck. And in this sense, the spirit can be observed in a way. Although once we try to observe it, it quickly goes away. It's akin to a lot of students attempting a headstand or a handstand, right? It's like that first time you get it, you're like, oh my God, no, no, that, and then you fall out of it because we're like observing what's going on. Oftentimes we just quiet our minds and just be what we can remain. It's kind of the unique thing about a lot of inversions or balance poses for that matter. Like the less you think about it, the more likely you are to achieve it. The same is true with meditation and realization of the spirit. Don't think about it, right? Don't ponder its existence. Trust in its existence. And once achieved, you'll know of its existence. All right, y'all. Have a great day. Be sure to take a few breaths today, okay? And be well. All right. Peace.